Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Rodney Featherstone. I'm certainly down the bottom of my right-hand side of the screen here, and most of you probably know me already, but my role at PB is Head of Commercial and look after the commercial part of the business. And it's my pleasure today to bring to you another educational event. This event is with PB Tech and Microsoft Surface. I've got to start by telling you the date because I haven't done this in the past, and we often record these and put them on our website. And so people watching this in 2 years' time might think that we're a little bit out of date. So today is the 29th of June 2022. At the end of the event, we've got a Microsoft giveaway or sort of evaluation trial that lasts for a couple of months. So that'll be expired in a couple of months from July, August 2022. So if you're watching this in 2 years' time, we are up with the play. We are not a little bit backwards, and sorry, but the evaluation and trial period is expired. So why don't I just start by introducing the others on the panel here. Tyler Costa, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Tyler. I work with PB commercial team, leading all of our commercial services here in New Zealand. I'm based down here in Christchurch, so lucky to be able to join the webinar using Teams, which is fantastic.
And Carlo.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Kalo. I'm representing Microsoft today, and my specialty is basically all of the cloud technology that Microsoft has out there, everything to do with Azure, Autopilot, and InTune. That's sort of where I live.
Very good. So the purpose of today's session is within PB Tech, we've got a range of customers, as you all know. Some of those customers are not yet using mobile device and modern device deployment and management, and they are still either taking a device back into their organization and then setting them up one at a time, through to the next stage would have been to do sort of old-fashioned imaging, to either image them yourselves or have a partner image. Moving on, you've got SCCM, and then moving on, you've now got InTune and Autopilot, and there's a range of customers along the journey. So what we want you to come out of today's session with is an understanding whether using the end goal, the 2022 version of InTune and Autopilot is the right decision for your business. And then if you are using that already, what are some tips and tricks that you can come away with from today's session about how to do it better? And if you're not there yet, the process that you're going to go through, whether it be right for you, is what we want to take you on that journey and let you know whether or not you should be bothering looking at this. So Tyler, why don't you run through just quickly the demos that we're going to run through, and then we'll probably quickly hand through to Kalo.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rodney. You're exactly on point, though. We've got a lot of customers that are sitting in the space of whether they're looking at InTune or jumping into the modern deployment world. Some might be already familiar with it and just need help with best practices. Others are already there, enjoying the benefits of zero touch. A lot of customers are still sitting in that legacy area. They still need the hybrid approach as well, where they might be doing some SCCM and InTune. Today, we are going to shine some light on the darker areas. A lot of people think that it's quite the journey to get set up, to go through this process, start using InTune, when in reality, it's quite easy just to flick it on and start using it, chunking it away, taking bit by bit. You can start turning on policies and bits and pieces here. You don't need to actually spend, a lot of time or a big project stood up just to get things running. You can actually take it piece by piece. So we're going to go into a couple of those details. We've got a couple of demos from Kalo. Essentially, we'll go over the very basics on how to get everything set up and turned on from the get-go and how you can start getting devices enrolled. And then we'll go into some of the bits and pieces that people really want to know about around the best practices for how we can utilize InTune's application deployment, how easy it actually is, as well as some of the conditional access, compliance, and being able to update devices automatically through there as well. So I'll hand it over to you, Kayla. Maybe we can go through the bit about Autopilot.
Yep, no problem. So guys, I'm just going to share my screen here first. Now, I do not want to kill you all with PowerPoint karaoke today. I'm going to keep the slides to a minimum. and we're going to try and make it as live demo as possible. But I do want to set the scene a little bit, and for those that are less familiar with the modern imaging process, I just want to take you through how things have sort of evolved. So most of us, I would say, have an idea about traditional Windows deployment and imaging, essentially, which is what we've done to deploy new devices in our organizations for many years. Essentially, we build a total custom image, which includes everything that you need on that computer. So our standard operating environment, and that would be Windows, the drivers we need, settings, policies, the apps, the configuration, the layout. If we have a VPN or an AV client that's installed, et cetera, et cetera. We then physically deploy that onto the device. Usually this is done via Ethernet, sometimes via USB, and it is a physical process. We plug it in, run the image over the network or off that USB stick, and re-image the device with our total operating environment. We then repeat this again and again and again for all the devices we have. This is slow. It takes a lot of space physically. It takes time, and there's a lack of flexibility. So as an industry, we have moved to modern deployment, and we are moving to modern deployment steadily. What we do here is we rely on the base installation on the device from the distributor, which in the case of Microsoft Surface is a great basic image. There's no bloatware there. It's got Office pre-installed, Defender set up, OneDrive's ready to go. But we rely on that base installation, and then we just make configuration changes based on whatever our job role specific setup might be. This is an asymmetric deployment. So now we essentially can give devices to people at any time, and when they connect to the cloud or the internet, that those changes or those configurations we need are pushed out specifically to the device. It's locked into our system, everything goes out, and we free up time for the more important things. Let's get into a little bit more detail though about specifically how this works in the real world. So you talk to PB Tech and you say, look, we are interested in a Surface solution, a hardware solution for our organization, and we want to use Autopilot. Great. You come up with a hardware solution that works for you. I want this many Surface laptops, this many Surface Goes, whatever it might be. That solution makes sense. You work out the timing, delivery, all those sorts of logistic details. The devices are shipped from distribution out to wherever you need them to be, whether that's to employees' houses or to an office space, doesn't matter. The hardware IDs, like unique identifiers for each device, are then given to PB Tech by the distributor, and PB Tech uploads them directly into your tenancy for you. So you just need to give them permission. It's a simple click of a button inside your tenancy, and PB Tech can upload those devices. So all of the unique hardware IDs are loaded into your tenancy already. Then you create those job-specific or role-specific configurations, and you align those to each staff member. So you've got some things at your device level. You know, everyone needs to have Office installed. Everyone needs to have the newest version of Chrome or whatever the specifics are for everyone. And then you've got your job-specific stuff like special desktop layouts. Some people might need the Adobe Creative Cloud installed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever those things are per role, and they're configured and set up. That's synced into your cloud as well and aligned with those hardware IDs. You can make changes to this at any time as well. This is a living environment. So this isn't something where you have set up this image and then you've got to recall the devices like we previously had to when you've had a change in how the business may operate. You can just make changes on the fly, and you can do those at any time. And that's sort of a little bit of a theme today, is that we can make changes on the fly. We're not locked into anything. One of the best things about working with InTune and modern management is you can get your feet wet early, play around with things, and then slowly add or change as you go. You're not going to break anything just by deploying it, usually. Okay, so that Surface device now arrives directly to the staff member's home. They take it out of a box, take the plastic off. Well, no plastic anymore. Microsoft's moving to all recycled packaging. Take the device out, turn it on. They connect to the cloud, and it syncs with that profile we created. And within a few minutes, the device has been bound to Azure Active Directory, enrolled in InTune for management, and all of the setup and configuration that we just spoke about is done for the device. Awesome. They're set up and ready to go. So we've got steady state usage from this point. Unfortunately, she does leave the organization. We can, from the cloud, reset the device, wipe all of that information for privacy's sake, send a shipping label out to that staff member, and ship it off to a new one. This new staff member works in a completely different role, different requirements, but they go through that same Autopilot process. We can do this as many times as we need to, regardless of how often we may need to re-provision the device. This maximizes our ROI, minimizes downtime, and it also means that we as a company are being as environmentally conscious as possible by getting the most out of each device, and also doing it in the most sort of power-friendly way as well, without having to ship it back to an office or anything, just sending it from staff member to staff member. When it reaches end of life, we deprovision it, wipe it again from the cloud, and send it off for recycling. Not once has IT ever intercepted or touched this device, but they've managed it through its whole life cycle. And this is genuinely how it works, okay? This is the life cycle of a Surface device or any Windows 10 device if you work with another OEM, although we'll talk about why Surface is a good choice today. But this is really how it works. I probably just do 2 to 3 Autopilot deployments for clients a month, and this is essentially how the experience runs. It's that easy, it's that simple, and it really is a faster and I guess less labor-intensive option compared to our traditional imaging.
Kaylo, you mentioned Adobe before.
Yeah.
Obviously that works. What about for companies that have got some, old-fashioned, 2,000-year-old app that is difficult, and they have still got the USB stick that they install off, or whatever? Is there some applications that just simply can't be deployed by Autopilot and InTune?
It's pretty rare. I won't say it's never happened that you can't deploy an app. I've run into it once or twice where, for whatever reason, it's just not deployable. And in that case, we can use traditional. We can use like a co-management approach, like Tyler mentioned earlier, where we do something like we still use SCCM to push the app out, or we still use an older method just for that one, if it's definitely necessary. And then we do everything else based on the modern management. So we're not locked into only doing our apps one way if we have that hurdle.
And a little feedback already in the chats here, Kaylo, is that Adobe, the Creative Cloud Suite, and those products in general are a bit of a pain and a bit of a gotcha for a lot of people. Is there some tips and tricks in terms of introducing that into InTune and managing the Adobe Creative Cloud licensing via InTune?
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you, Sean. That is definitely a tricky one. Adobe Creative Cloud's given me a couple of headaches in the past as well. My go-to best practice for when deploying Creative Cloud is to go into the Adobe Creative Cloud Admin Center, create an MSI package with just the smallest app you can, which includes the Creative Cloud installer and maybe Adobe Acrobat. Because that's one of the smaller apps in there. It's still going to be a pretty big file, but much smaller than if you'd already packaged up Photoshop and Premiere or something as well. Just deploy that smaller package onto the device and then use the Adobe installer, which you can run from their cloud service, to install the rest of the apps. That's my preferred method when doing it, is use InTune for the initial install of the Creative Cloud console or app, whatever you want to call it, and then use the Adobe app deployer from their cloud service post that.
Yeah, nice. We've also got a question here from David regarding, can multiple users have a profile on the same laptop, e.g. a laptop pool?
Yeah, definitely can. It works just the same as a normal multi-user Windows device where you've all got your own login, etc. There are other options for that too. We can do things like Windows Virtual Desktop or something along that nature, where we've got a single device with multiple cloud profiles that people can access from it. It just depends what's going to work best for the organization. But yeah, using Autopilot's not going to stop you from doing any normal Windows type tasks, like having multi-users on the same device, etc.
So the general process for introducing an old-fashioned application or a unique application that you've got in your organization is to wrap it up in an MSI and then upload that into your InTune portal for deployment and management. Is that how you see it?
I think that's one of the best ways to do it. I don't use MSI files anymore. I wrap those as well as InTune Win files, just as best practice again. The reason being is that if you have a mix of MSI and InTune Win files, you can sometimes run into some issues when they're not all the same file type. And InTune Win has a few extra steps that let you do a couple of things, like it's a bit easier to handle your updates and things like that. So I prefer to not use MSI files. I wrap those in InTune Win, and I wrap X's as InTune Win files as well.
Nice. Thanks, Kaylo. I think that gives us a really good high-level understanding of how the Autopilot deployment goes. Obviously, that's a really key piece and one of the core benefits of being able to be modern managed and using InTune, leveraging that technology. I think the part that a lot of our customers have started to realize, really capitalize on, is exactly that point you mentioned which is that it is basically like a living environment, right? Where you can make those hot changes quickly and on the go. You're not having to reconfigure laptops left, right, and center and manage an entire fleet when you can easily just manage them through a portal and being able to change those settings on the go. I think that will probably segue nicely into our next piece, which is obviously the portal, how to basically get started with InTune.
Let me jump in. So guys, going to share my screen again. For those not familiar, this is Endpoint Manager. Endpoint Manager is an admin center fairly recently introduced by Microsoft that combines a bunch of tools that were sort of sitting in the Azure portal or some other locations, just as a single point for us to manage endpoints essentially and just get everything into one place. So InTune, Autopilot, Defender for Endpoint, and a few other things are all inside here now. I work in here quite a lot. I think it's a pretty robust endpoint management system. And we're going to demo a couple of things in here today. And I'm going to address one of those questions that Chris asked as well about, can we also domain join devices from InTune? And I'll demo where we can do that and how we can do that. So first things first, I want to show you how quick and easy it is to actually get set up to do an Autopilot deployment. So everything I'm doing here is in real time. I haven't pre-prepped anything. I'm just going to go through and do it as we go. And this is, I hope, a realistic kind of example of how quickly and easily you can start to add in some of this modern management to your organization's IT solutions. So the first thing I need to do is just make sure we're set up for Autopilot, basically, and that Autopilot's going to work. So I'm going to jump into this option here, which is enroll devices, which is where Autopilot and the Autopilot functionality sits, as you see down here. But what I'm looking for now is automatic enrollment. Now, automatic enrollment is basically an option that we're going to turn on that allows any, or that makes any device or a certain subset of devices automatically be enrolled into InTune for device management. So InTune is our device management software. It started as mobile device management. Now it's basically for almost every endpoint except for maybe Linux endpoints. Other than that, we can manage pretty much everything. And what is going to happen now is any device that we bind to our Azure Active Directory is going to automatically get enrolled in InTune, which is a requirement for Autopilot to function. So we're going to turn this MDM user scope, so mobile device management user scope, to all devices. You'll see that these discovery URLs are already pre-filled for me. You can use a different MDM if you're using Mobile Iron or one of those others. It's still possible to use Autopilot with them. It doesn't work as well and it can be a little bit tricky, but it is possible. So you could change these to those MDM enrollments. But in this case, we're working with InTune, we're working with the native solution, and I'm just going to turn that to all and click Save. Bang. So from now on, any device that is enrolled into Azure Active Directory is automatically enrolled into InTune. So what do we do next? Well, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a group. The reason we want to create a group, you see I've got a bunch in here from demos I've done previously, but the reason we want to create a group is we want to create a dynamic group that automatically adds devices to it. The reason for this is if we've got a lot of devices coming in, especially say our newly purchased Surface devices that we're going to be using for Autopilot, we want them to automatically be in the correct security group so we can apply policies and configurations and deployment profiles to them. So I'm going to create a group that's a dynamic group that automatically adds those devices. So I'm just going to go to new group. It's a security group, correct? And I'm just going to call this Surface deployment or Surface. Let's say Surface laptops because they're the ones we're buying in this round, something like that. Under the membership type, though, I am not going to choose assigned. I'm going to choose dynamic device. The reason I'm going to choose dynamic device is, as I said, I'm looking to dynamically add devices. I don't want to like manually click on 500 new laptops and have them added in. What I want is this to do it by itself every time that those devices are added. I'm then going to click Add Dynamic Query. Okay, so there's a few ways for me to create a query. There's a query creator here, all right, where I can choose all different variables on why I would want to add it in. This is really helpful when you're coming up with all different types of dynamic device groups. Having this query creator gives you the flexibility to do quite a lot of stuff, and it's pretty helpful. What I am going to do, though, in this case is cheat and just use a query that I've already created earlier. So if I go down here to edit, I'm going to put in my query. It's pretty straightforward. It's any device with a device physical ID. You see here, that contains ZTDID. ZTDID stands for Zero Touch Deployment ID. This is a little identifier that's going to be in every hardware hash or hardware ID from a device that we're wanting to run through Autopilot. So when you talk to PB Tech and they upload those, that's already going to be there. So this is automatically going to add all devices that are ready for Autopilot to this group. As soon as they're enrolled, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment, they're going to automatically get added to this group. I'm going to save this query, and now I'm going to create this group. It's not there yet, but if we give it, let's say, 3, 2, 1. Oh, 3, 2, 1. It'll be there in a sec. There we go. The demo gods weren't too harsh on me. So you see now my service laptop groups there. All right, so I've created a dynamic device group. When I upload and import devices, and I'll show you how we do that in just a moment, they're going to be added into there. What I also need to do, though, is I need to create a deployment profile for Autopilot. And I'll address Chris's question about hybrid join here as well. So I'm going to again go to enroll devices, and I'm going to click on deployment profiles here under the Windows Autopilot deployment program. I'm going to jump quickly into here, create a profile for Windows PC, give it a name. Just working on this Surface Laptops example. And I've got a few options here. One of the key ones is user driven. That's what I want to have this set at because I'm not deploying a kiosk or a self-deploying device. Users are going to be using these devices and they're going to go personally through that Autopilot process. Here's where we can decide if it's going to be a hybrid Azure AD joined or an Azure AD joined device. So addressing your question, Chris, if we want to do that, we just need to click this button here, and we do need to add a little configuration profile for domain join, just so it has the domain join info sent to it when it goes through the Autopilot process. In this case, I'm just going to do Azure AD join. I'm not going to change anything else here, although I could apply a device name template. So if I wanted to have a set, like serial number plus business unit or something like that, I can add that as a set template in there. Next, I'm going to add it to the group. So of course, I'm going to make that our Surface Laptops group. Okay, and I'm going to create. So now what I've done is I've created a dynamic group that's going to automatically add devices to it. When those devices are added, they're also going to get the Autopilot deployment profile ready to deploy them when they first connect to the web. So when a device first connects to the internet during its out-of-box experience, if that device ID is in your tenancy, it will know to lock that device into your Azure AD, use the Autopilot deployment profile I've just set there to give the initial settings, and then take it through that automatic enrollment into InTune, which we also turned on.
So just for clarification, Kalo, if PB Tech made a mistake and gave you the wrong hardware hash, and you uploaded that into your InTune manager, and that was from some customer in Spain, and they opened up their device out of the box, it would say, oh, this device belongs to your company, and begin the enrollment process, right? This happens anywhere in the world without IT having to touch it at all.
Yep, it would. And if the device has already been enrolled before, like say it was a refurbished device or something, and they had made a mistake and not deleted it from the previous tenancy, it wouldn't actually upload it. It'll say there's an error in this import and you can't upload this device because this ID is owned by someone else. What's the process that we go through? And Tyler, you might be the best to answer this if that does happen, because part of our environmental sustainability program is that we guarantee customers that we wipe their data, don't send it offshore, resell it either into the islands or to New Zealand, and give them certificates of data destruction. If that device that we've received back, gone through that data destruction, given a certificate, and then resell it to say a school in New Zealand, and they go and try and use it, it sounds to me like it's much the same as an Apple lock on an iPhone. What's the process for getting that off?
Normally, it's the easiest to engage with the company that's obviously e-wasting or recycling the devices, because if it's happening on one of them, it's likely to happen on a whole bunch that we've received back, right? So we'll get those removed from AD and removed from InTune, etc. If in the case where we've got a stray and we can't find any information on it, then we usually work closely with Microsoft in resolving those.
Yeah, you can raise a ticket with Microsoft and they should be able to fix the problem if you've got proof of purchase, etc.
That's right. It's usually quite painless, to be honest.
And Tyler, Sanjay's got a very, very sad question here. He's regrettably had to purchase a device from somewhere else other than PB Tech, and he is, of course, weeping. How does he engage our services to enroll his device into his portal?
We do have the ability to enroll certain devices from different manufacturers, HP or Microsoft Surface devices, for example. A lot of our customers that engage with PB Tech Business and start buying devices, we do a lot of retroactive enrollments for them. So if they've got devices running around out there that they need to get enrolled and they don't want to run a script or anything like that to process an enrollment, then we can also accommodate in that area as well. And then your next device that you buy from us will be automatically enrolled.
Amazing. One other quick statement from me, I guess. Kayla's talked about how amazing the Microsoft Surface product is because it doesn't come with bloatware. Of course, the same can't be said for all other vendors. And just for your information, Tyler's team also run a clean imaging process for other vendors that often our customers are getting, putting their devices through our factory, getting them wiped clean with plain Windows on them before the hardware hash enrollment process begins and they head out the door. So that can be done at our PB Tech factory as well. So you can just talk to us about that.
We've actually had a pretty good success rate recently. Vendors are playing quite nicely with the software that they're loading onto the devices, which is good. But in those odd occurrences where we do get a certain batch of laptops that have specific maybe antivirus or endpoint security that's causing issues with InTune deployments, then we can definitely accommodate with the clean image builds on regardless of what device it is. To be fair, that is credit towards Microsoft's point of view, though. With their Surface devices, I don't think we've ever needed to worry about a clean image on any Surface devices because the deployments just go so smoothly on those.
Very good. Kayla, we're interrupted.
No problem. No, it's fine.
Go ahead.
Getting carried away.
The last thing I was just going to show as part of this first demo was just how we do import. We jump here in our Autopilot devices and we click import with a CSV. Okay, that's the way that we can manually import devices ourselves. The real way that's going to happen mostly in the commercial world is that PB Tech is going to have those device IDs from distribution already, and they're going to upload them directly through Partner Center into your tenancy for you, and all the devices will just appear here. So you'll be able to see before you receive them, serial numbers, the device type, model, etc., and even a purchase order number, which can be really helpful when you're filtering or working out which devices you're going to deploy to which group. You can base that on order number or purchase order number. And that's kind of it for my first demo, guys. So we did have a few good questions. Is there anything else we wanted to cover off before I sort of jump into some configurations on the device?
Let's have a look. There's actually quite a few questions that we're running through. Let's see if we can pick one that really touches a pain point that others are experiencing.
Why don't you carry on with the next demo, Kayla, and Tyler and I will keep reading and bring up some questions through that process.
Yeah, not a problem. I'll jump into the next one. I did see Simon's question. Simon, I'll answer that as I get into this next one. The best way to do that is to have a basic Autopilot deployment profile, which is at the device level. And then for those individual groups, so your different finance, marketing, etc. groups have different user-based applications and configurations that go out specifically after the user first logs into the device. So you'll have sort of your Autopilot deployment, which is basic and at device level, goes out to all devices, and then you'll have at the user level a few other more complex configurations, etc., based on those specific job requirements. All right, so next thing I'm going to demo is actually security based. So we've created a dynamic group, we've given a deployment profile, we've imported our hardware IDs, our devices are ready to go. Now we're going to create some security rules, and we're going to start locking down and protecting our Surface devices. So I'm going to jump in here to Windows devices and configuration profiles. Now, this is a unique to Surface feature, this first feature I'm going to show. The reason it's unique to Surface is Microsoft write their own UEFI or firmware for the device. So only that's the only firmware they have direct access to. And I'm going to show you what we can do from here. I'm going to show you a very specific configuration profile called Device Firmware Configuration Interface, or DFCI. All right. So DFCI is a way for us to control firmware before it ever boots to Windows. So from the cloud, we can get access to the UEFI and we can make changes to it. And I'm going to call this boot security, and I'll show you why. So there's a few things we can do through DFCI, including we can control whether or not users can alter local UEFI settings. I'm going to say none. They are not allowed to, on our Surface device, access their UEFI or firmware. We're locking that down. We'll manage that from the cloud. And you see I've got a range of other security settings around CPI virtualization. I can control cameras, microphones and speakers, etc. And you see here I've got boot options. Boot from external media or boot from a network adapter. I'm going to disable both of these. All right, reason being is I'm imaging this device or deploying this device using Autopilot. I do not want to allow people to have access to these other boot options. Why? Because now if someone steals my Surface device, they try and reset it and they try and re-image it from one of those options, they've got a brick on their hands. It won't work. We're locked down from a firmware from a firmware angle. And what this is also going to do is protect data. Okay, so we're going to have BitLocker encrypted hard drives anyway, but there are sometimes tricky little ways to get around that by re-image the device and getting access to the drive, maybe using Linux, something like that. In this case, they're just simply not going to be able to re-image the device, blocking those options. All right, you can see as well I can even block port access, etc. if I wanted to. I'm going to make that my boot security next. I'm going to add this to my deployment group. So this is going to go out as part of the Autopilot deployment. So during that initial boot, select, next. I'm not going to have any applicability rules. I'm just going out to everyone. Boom, boom, boom. This is what I want. I'm going to create it. That's it. I've created that boot security now. It's going to get deployed to those devices. That took me about a minute. Of course, I'm familiar with the tool, so I'm doing it a bit faster than you might the first time you do it, but it doesn't take long to get used to this stuff. As you can see, it's been built for speed and usability in mind, although it hits all those key points. So it really is this fast to get started on setting up some of this tech. All right, what else might we want to do with our device? So we've now locked down our security, etc. Something else that's pretty common is we may want to create a custom start menu and layout because we do have a standard operating environment that we want our users to see when they log in with the apps laid out a certain way, etc. So
can you add a bookmark into a browser? You know, does it go down that detailed, or is it just?
We can, as long as it's Chromium. So if it's Chromium Edge, we can. Yeah, so we can add bookmarks to browsers. We can pin apps or web pages to the taskbar. We can do a range of things like that. Let me show you the best way to do this though. Is again, I'm just going to go Windows 10 and templates, and I'm going to go down to device restrictions. Device restrictions is pretty common. Or one of the bigger sections inside your CSPs or your policies, configuration policies. And we're going to call this start layout. Got a lot of options here. Everything from, you know, giving them access to different display settings, whether or not we've got proxies set up, etc., etc., etc. In this case, I'm just going to be looking at the start menu though, and it's asking me to upload a layout. This is an XML file. Microsoft uses XML to basically control the layout of Windows in general, and this is a way for us to use an XML file to set that start menu layout. The best way to create this XML file is to actually create the start menu you want on a computer, basically sit there, drag the apps you want on one of the devices, the layout you want, the setup you want, and then run a quick PowerShell command to pull that XML off and create that standard template. There are other ways to do it. You can just write it from scratch. But in this case, the best way to do the way I'm going to recommend is that way because I think it's the best way to do it. All right, so I'm just going to grab one that I created earlier. See here, I've got a staff layout with a taskbar, and you see that I've got everything set up in this XML. So you can see that it's got, you know, the cell with what application goes where. You can see that it's I've got all my sticky notes and company portal apps, calculator, whatever it might be. It's all set up there, and I've added that in. I've got some more options here I could look at. So whether or not I allow people to unpin apps from the taskbar, whether or not I have the power button showing or lock and sign out, all these things I can change and adjust based on what I want. I'm not going to go through all that configuration now. We're just going to do that custom start menu because I put everything I want in there. I'm going to go next. And again, add that to the group. So this is going to go out to my group. as part of at the device level, as part of that Autopilot deployment. Again, no applicability. This is just a rule if you want to exempt certain groups or if you want to make sure that, say, older operating systems aren't getting these updates because you know they're not going to support certain apps or things like that. You can use applicability rules to exempt them. So I'm just going to click create now, and I've created the start menu. So I've done my boot security. I've done that customized layout. What else might I want to do? Let's look at bundling up an app, just so you can see how quick that can be. I saw a few people in the chat already fairly familiar with this, so that's great, but I'm just going to show you how we do it. So I'm going to jump over here to apps, Windows apps. I'm going to add an application. In this case, I'm going to choose, as I said, a Win32 or InTune Win file. These are the ones we tend to go with these days. I'll click select. You can see there's a whole range there, including applications from the store, including MSI files, etc. I am going to choose an InTune Win app package that I've created earlier. In this case, what are we going to do? Let's do Zoom. We're on a Teams call, but we still have clients that want to use Zoom. See, I've got Zoom packaged up here. It's already got most of what I need installed. Next. You'll see it's already, because it was an MSI that I packaged, it's already pre-filled my install and uninstall commands. Sometimes you may need to write those in yourself. They are fairly easy though. You've just got to direct it to where the install file is. So it might be, install app.exe, and you'll need to find where the uninstall is, which is often the same file. I do need to select if it's 32-bit or 64-bit or available for both. And I do need to select a minimum operating system. Let's select 1703. It'll definitely be past there. Now I need a detection rule. Detection rules is to make sure we don't install an app that's already installed. Okay, and there's a few different ways to do that. In this case, I am going to just rely on the MSLI file to do it itself because it has a product code built into it. It's going to know when it sees that product code, hey, this is already there. We're not going to install this app. Okay, you can also do things like you can choose whether or not there's a registry entry for it or a file location. Say if this file's here, don't install because we know it's already installed. As I said, we're just going to do the MSI file. There's no dependencies for this one, and there's no supersedents. Those are as what they sound like. If you don't want an app to install unless another app's already installed, you make it a dependency possible. And if you want an app to install only if the previous app isn't installed or is installed, sorry, you can use supersedents to replace a previously installed app.
Koto, where do you say that you only want Zoom installed if it's for the marketing department and not for the finance department?
Yeah, right. So that's where you do. That's what you do here in group. All right. So I've been doing all of my assignments for apps, all the configurations to the basically the device level, that dynamic device group I created. In here, if I want to create a group for marketing or whatever it might be, let's say Contoso is the whole group, I would just click here and go, it's required for this group. It's available for this group. So you see here on, I've got required and available. Required means it's going to get installed for anyone in that group. All right. Available means it's going to be in the public store for anyone in that group. So you can have both of those sort of options. So I could have required for marketing department, but it's also available for the sales team if they want to get it. But it won't be pre-installed. They'll go to the private store, which we're not going to demo today, but it's fairly easy to set up a private store for the group, which they can then go and retrieve apps from. And it can speed up your Autopilot process. If you go, look, not everyone needs this. Let's put all these as available apps into the store, and anyone that does need them in those teams can go and grab them.
And I assume that the uninstall is if you've changed devices or you've moved role or whatever, and you want it removed off the device for licensing purposes, and you chuck it down there and it removes it.
That's right. That's one way to do it. Another way is you also use to get rid of bloatware, like you were talking about. Like, so if you've got some laptops coming and they've all got, sometimes one of the common ones I put in there is like the Windows, the Xbox Game Bar or the Windows Game Bar. I pull that off for a lot of corporate devices because they don't want it. So you can put that in the uninstall to make sure that they pull that off when it first goes through the process. In this case, though, again, I'm just going to do this as required because everyone needs this app apparently. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to create. and I've just packaged up and deployed an app. Now, there's a couple of steps I didn't show there, just for convenience and to speed up today's demos, and that is like packaging the app. There's a free tool on GitHub published by Microsoft for packaging your apps as InTune Win files, though, and you can search that just by looking for InTune Win package or install app packager or installer. I can't remember what it's called. It's a free package, though. Links to it all through the Microsoft site as well. And it's just a command line tool you can use to do that. Takes a couple of minutes at most to package most of your apps. You can see now it is uploading the Zoom app package for me. It's not quite there yet. It's at 26%, but that'll finish in a few minutes and then be available for all those staff when they go through their Autopilot deployment.
Fantastic. Thanks, Caleb. I
No
think
worries.
really good to see that Microsoft are now leveraging the device firmware configuration. I mean, being able to automate the UEFI settings, it's just so much better than, having to physically configure all of those settings like we used to. So being able to go on the fly and change all those bits and pieces when devices are deploying is it's significantly better than the old manual way of going about it. And I think you also touched on a really good point with the application deployment. I mean, you blazed through the demo, which is fantastic. It really does highlight how easy it is to get an application deployed through Autopilot. A lot of our customers seem to think that it can be quite the challenge with a lot of hurdles, but it takes 10 minutes to set one up and get one deployed. It's not that hard these days, which is fantastic.
There's good questions in the chat, by the way. Some that could go on for a long time. But I'll just, Akmal's asked two really detailed questions. Akmal, the answer to both your questions is it's possible to do both those things, but of course you need a little bit of knowledge and there's a few tricky bits to it. But you can definitely do printer driver installations and also mapping to printers, whether those are cloud or local drivers. And you can definitely do drive mapping to local servers as well. You don't need to use GPOs for that. We can do that via InTune CSPs. You just need a little bit of knowledge around how to do it. So I'm not going to go through the whole demo of how to do those things today. It's not quite right, but definitely can do it. And Craig, we can deploy to browsers with pre-configured bookmarks, etc. as well. We can set all of that up to a very granular level.
Right. So what we're going to do here from a timing perspective is we've got another demo still to come. But I'm determined to keep these to 45 minutes for those that are catching us during their lunch break. So we're going to skip to the end, and then we're going to hang around for another 15 minutes or so and run through the last demo. So apologies if you've got to shoot off, but I wanted to cover this off with you before you leave. We have a trial device offer available from Microsoft for the next couple of months. KP, do you want to go to the next slide? If you hold your device up to that QR code, you can go to our website where it gives you the details of what that means for you. The next part of the demo is going to be talking about why Microsoft Surface devices are the bee's knees compared to every other thing under the sun. That is because Microsoft are paying the bill, for which we are most grateful. And this enables you to trial a Surface device comparative to your other devices in your organization for 2 months if you meet a certain criteria. So we're really keen to work with you at PB Tech to make sure that you have that available to you if you're in the market and feel like that's a benefit to you. So please contact us via that form that's available online now. One of the other things that we'll talk about later on is just Tyler's team and how we can deploy your devices from our factory, and also the end of life and that recycle facility that we've got that Kayla talked on. So why don't we sign off those that need to leave us at 12:45, and we'd love to talk with you more about your licensing and about your deployments and about your devices, and we can certainly help out with all those things. One of the next things that we're going to go through is what licenses that you require and rough costing is required to utilize these InTune and auto deployment tools. So hang around if you've got time. If you don't, we understand. This session will be recorded through to the end, so you can watch it later on. So thanks for attending, those that need to shoot off. So back to you, Kayla.
No worries, guys. So your last little demo here, just to sort of wrap up the whole story and talk a bit about security. So I'll jump back into here. And the two things I want to show here are two of the key parts of security. First one is updates, okay? So keeping devices up to date and making sure those updates are done in a timely manner is really important. But sometimes we also need to protect ourselves from updates if we've got specific configurations and we're not sure if those updates are going to work with them. What we can do in that case is use update rings. So we can create various update rings within our organization based on critical how important it is that that device goes down or up and how important it is that device stays up to date. So for example, something I do pretty regularly is deploy Microsoft Teams Rooms devices. These devices are notorious at times for having some issues around updates in special configurations. So I always advise clients to have a first update ring, and this applies to laptops too, that we would call test. And this is for, devices that are with the IT team or specifically set aside for testing. And we set that up with all updates allowed and a 0 update deferral period. And then we have a secondary ring that we would call production, where we give everyone, 14 days, like 2 weeks deferral on all updates, just to make sure there's no problem. Now, if there's a critical security update, we can still force that through. We're not blocked from it. This is just by default. We're not going to let those updates hit until we've had a chance for our test devices to be out there in the wild for a week or 2 weeks, see how they work, make sure that nothing that we've deemed critical is going down and none of our special configurations are breaking. Very easy to set that up, very easy to get going with these immediately. And you can do this even if you're not using any other parts of InTune currently. Again, you just assign these using the device groups or security groups. Easy one. Next thing I wanted to demo though is how we secure our data a bit. So we've talked about security at the firmware level. Let's talk about the other big part of modern security, which is conditional access or controlling access to our data by applying rules about who can get access from where and when. So I'm going to go down here to conditional access, and I'm going to create a new policy. You see I've got a couple set up here for MTR devices that I was demoing earlier. In this case, we're going to call this M365 access, all right? We're going to make this apply to special users and groups. So in this case, we'll call it, where's our Surface group? Yeah, all right. So all of these new Surface laptops are going to have control to their Office 365, have some conditions on it. The first condition is location, okay? So if they are in our trusted location, if they're in a trusted location, we're going to grant them access. If they're in our trusted location, we're going to block access unless they. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear it, but I have chooks here and they're being extremely loud. If they're in a trusted location, we're going to block access unless they require multi-factor authentication. So as long as they're on our network and they give us MFA, they're going to get access. We can create a secondary. We're going to create that one. We can create a secondary policy to block access if they're off our trusted location. So these users are only getting access inside our trusted IP ranges. And then we would create a second one. So block M365 based on that user group. So if those users, and we go to Surface again. So I've created two policies here, one to block access and one to grant access to those people getting blocked to our M365 or our cloud apps. Here we go. And there's going to be they're going to get blocked. So all users in that group can't access M365 unless they're in the correct location and they're giving us their multi-factor.
Kaylo, Darren's
Yes.
made a good point regarding, we focused on Windows management. What
Yes.
about Android and iOS? Can you use some of these same tools to manage
definitely.
iOS devices?
Actually, great question. We 100% can. I'll give you a quick look at what we could do with Android because I've got some stuff set up here already. Now, you'll see I've got MTR Android devices blocked and granting access here. This is because I was demonstrating how to use those, but I'll get into the specifics of what we could even do. is, say if we go down here to tenant administration and filters, you see I've created a filter for Android devices. I'll give you a look at what that looks like. Right now, all Android devices of this particular model, in this case, this is an Android device built by Logitech, but you could filter for any Android device, whether that's a Samsung phone or whatever you want. All of those are filtered out as right down to the device level. And I've created rules around compliance based on that. So if I jump up here to my compliance policies, you see I've created a policy that's going to block rooted devices, require a minimum OS version, be marked on compliant, and filter specifically for the particular Android devices I want. So I can apply different rules to different Android devices. And if it's not that particular device, which might be our company issued device, I can block access completely, just based on filtering down to that device level. You can control applications, what apps are allowed to be installed on the device. If an app is installed, you can control the data specifically on the app. You don't even need to control the device itself. You can just say, if they've installed our company app, they can't copy and paste into other parts of the phone. And you can do that on iOS or Android devices. And you can control those sorts of settings as well. You can manage everything except Linux devices. So, iPhones, Android, Mac devices, all can be managed. So
Fantastic.
that's the end of the demo, guys. I know we're running a little over. Do we still want to quickly go through that licensing stuff, Tyler?
Yeah, we just actually had a question come through from Alex regarding, what licensing gives you access to what features within InTune. And I think you've got a pretty simple way of explaining it.
Yeah, I do. So 1 second, guys. I'm just going to bring up these slides here.
So Alex, in response to your question, we've got a licensing team at PB Tech that you can be in touch with via the procurement team, and they will run through all of the requirements. They can even come on site, look at your tenancy, look at your portal, look at your existing licensing structure, and make sure that we've chopped and changed your licensing to suit what is the most cost-effective way of you utilizing these tools. And incidentally, regardless of this, we've had examples where we've had customers that are using the wrong kind of licensing, and we've been able to move them to a more cost-effective way of managing their tenancy, especially now that Microsoft have changed their licensing in the last couple of months to require us to move you onto the new system. So we'd love to speak with you in more detail about your licensing, but I'll leave back to Kalo about this in particular.
No worries. So you guys, look, I'm going to be really quick here, and it's really straightforward. You've essentially probably already got the licensing for this ready to go. You need to have a P1 or P2 Azure Active Directory license, and you need some type of MDM license. As I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be InTune, although InTune is the native option. It could be another third-party MDM. If you do not have those, you can buy an additional SKU, and you can talk to PB Tech about the pricing for that, but I can tell you it's around $10 a month Australian, called Enterprise Mobility and Security, and you can add this on to your existing Office 365 or Business Premium license to give you access to the InTune and the Azure Active Directory services you need to run all this modern management I was demoing today. It's that simple. So you probably already got it, depending on your E3 or E5 licensing situation. But if you don't, you can get a little additional SKU that you just pay for based on the additional users. Every user, when you've got an InTune license, can have up to 5 devices enrolled in InTune. So you don't need to buy a license for each device they have. If you want to manage their phone, their laptop, and their home PC, or whatever it might be, up to 5 devices are going to be included under that individual license. And it's that simple.
So if you have E3, E5, Business Premium certainly includes InTune and auto deployment licensing, doesn't it?
I'm pretty sure it does. I'm not a licensing expert, so I don't want to make a mistake, but I'm pretty sure it does. And I believe they bundled it into pretty much all the standard E3, and definitely E5 has it. They also include it into, like, say, if you've got like Teams Room devices or Surface Hub licensing, InTune's now bundled in with that.
Excellent. Well, if you want to be in touch with one of our licensing specialists, please be in touch with us at procurement@pbtech.co.nz, and we can make sure that we've worked with you on a case-by-case basis. So with that, Tyler, do you have anything else to wrap up with?
No, I mean, Kayla, you've touched on so many good points. I think it's been fantastic just highlighting a couple of the bits and pieces. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of people think that InTune is a big scary beast and a difficult project to stand up, where in reality, you just turn it on and then you can chip away at policies or profiles and bits and pieces as you go. You don't need to actually take it on all at once. You also don't need to switch over from SCCM to InTune and make it a hard cut. You can actually be running your traditional deployment methods, turn on, start using InTune, and you can keep them running side by side, and obviously migrate things over as you go. So that is just one of the things that PBTech does with our customers as well, is not only talking about deployments and services around the assets, but also about how we can help you manage that, how we can find cost efficiencies, and how we can get you to that modern deployment stage.
We do have nationwide services and on-site techs that can come out and work with you through your journey, and pick off some of these pieces in bite-sized chunks and help you to get there through the setup of the InTune process as well if you need that. Colin, you've just got a last quick question there. How much does it cost to run through a clean image service? Tyler, from memory, that's about $29. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Normally, depending on the services and bits and pieces, whether we're asset tagging them, clean imaging them, Autopilot enrolling them, most of our customers are paying about that $20 to $30 range per device.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Hope it's been helpful for you. We will be recording this and sending out a link and having it available on our website as well. Encourage you to be in touch with us at any point. And special thanks to Kaylo, who's done an amazing job walking us through this. Really appreciate your input.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot, guys. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. There was a bunch of good ones in there. Hopefully I answered the ones I quickly saw.
Excellent. Thanks, team.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.